Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. This is a special milestone episode. It is episode 99, and yes, I'm aware that I've really done like 160 episodes at this point, but not counting the bonus episodes and the update episodes and the part 2 episodes and all the other miscellaneous stuff. This is the 99th enumerated episode, and so I am going to give you 99 ideas that I have not yet turned into a podcast, which is a pretty groovy idea. This will be a great opportunity to get a preview of what I'm working on and what will be coming down the pike for the Hey Chaplain podcast. But this is also an invitation, because some of these ideas I have leads for, but others are just ideas, and I need a lead. I need someone to put me in contact with the right person to get the right email address or the right phone number into my hands so that I can make these topics happen. Maybe you're the missing part of the equation that I need to make that episode a reality. So listen carefully. Here's my list of 99 ideas that I've not yet made into a podcast. Let's start our list with the feds. You'll probably notice that I've had many federal law enforcement agents on the show already. But sometimes, and it's really not that unusual for me to make a request, and the federal agent will send it up the chain of command, and a supervisor or a lawyer will squash the interview because they don't know me. Typically, if they've heard of me, if they're aware of me, or if they maybe just really trust the agent, we get a green light, but a lot of times I get a red light. And I understand. I'm sure they get a lot of requests from people they can't trust. I get it. But on my list of podcasts I want to make that I have not made yet, the FBI and the DEA both have a lot of great stories, investigations, undercover work, especially the undercover work, getting to discuss wellness, obstacles during and after an undercover stint. There's just all kinds of good stuff there. And typically for most of those, I'd be looking for retirees or people whose cases have long ago been adjudicated and it's all water under the bridge anyway. But the FBI, DEA, both high on my list. After that would be the Secret Service. I think there's lots of interesting stories there about VIP protection and the emotional implications of protecting people and being responsible for their lives. Then I had a ballistics investigator from the ATF, and again, a lawyer stepped in the way and said, no, we can't talk about that job at all. I really think I could talk about that without giving away any of the trade secrets or anything that would violate operational security or anything like that. But an ATF ballistics investigator, boy, that's one I've wanted to get for a long time, and I've been working on it for a few years now. A postal inspector, I think that would be genuinely interesting. I think some people don't even realize that that's a law enforcement position. U.S. Capitol Police, that's a very unique police force in the United States. And so the U.S. Capitol Police, that would be a good one. ICE, Customs and Border Protection / Border Patrol, all of that together, I think there are just countless stories about the type of work and the toll that it takes and just a lot of the unique aspects in that type of law enforcement work. And then any of the really rare and unusual federal agencies or federal task forces or unusual task force assignments, I just feel like there's a wealth of stories and wisdom that's going to come out of that, where you either were a federal agent or you were working for a federal task force and just had this unique place that you were in for a period of your career. I feel like there's lots of good stuff there. My last federal law enforcement idea is the process of going Fed. I actually know a couple where both the husband and wife were local PD and transitioned over to different federal agencies. And I know several that have done that, and I just have never been able to get a sit-down interview with those people and just talk about the impact that has in your marriage and on your family to move from local law enforcement to feds. From the feds, you can easily then go to your state agencies. And I have also done some of those. I've talked to California Highway Patrol and some others, but there are other state highway patrol and state troopers and state police that I would be interested in. In Kansas, we have kind of a miniature FBI. We have the KBI, and there's other state investigative units like that I would be interested in talking to. And then the Port Authority in New Jersey and New York. It's interesting because that's a state agency that's shared between two states. It's a bi-state agency, kind of unique and interesting there. And then the Texas Rangers, which I believe is the oldest statewide law enforcement agency in the U.S. So that would be a coveted interview, and to get somebody to talk about either the history of it or their personal experience as a Texas Ranger. I'm always interested in international law enforcement, and I'd like to increase that. I'm talking to a police officer right now from Adelaide, Australia, and I'm hoping to get that interview, or maybe even use him to make connections in other places in Australia. I have a few connections with people who have been police or military in Mexico, and I think that there's a lot of interest there. I'm also keenly interested in Colombia, really with Mexico and Colombia both. I think that I'm looking primarily at stories where people were fighting against the cartels and trying to do honest police work in a place that might have been compromised by the cartels. I think both of those would be really interesting stories. Then maritime law. Now, this isn't necessarily international, but it's kind of just outside of the normal jurisdiction of a country. Maritime law enforcement on like a cargo vessel or a cruise ship. I've actually talked to a cruise line about their cruise ship security, and I wasn't able to get an interview with an actual security officer. Maybe I could talk to someone who manages that for the cruise line, but cargo ships too. I mean, really, the Merchant Marine or the Coast Guard, just kind of anything where they might have to deal with maritime law enforcement. I think that would be interesting. Moving on to my history episodes, I love doing history. Not so much exactly true crime, but the history of law enforcement. I just think that's fascinating, and there's always applications that extend down, reverberate down through the years to today. And so one I've not done yet that I wanted to do for a long time is the 1997 North Hollywood shootout. I've met people who have several connections there, but I've never actually gotten someone who was willing to do an interview that was either there that day or was maybe part of LAPD immediately afterward and could talk about the changes that were made. Of course, North Hollywood shootout's one of the reasons that there's rifles in patrol cars. And so just I'm very interested in getting that. I don't know if you've seen the movie Serpico, but of course, that is a police corruption story out of New York, but also police corruption stories in the early to mid 20th century. There's quite a bit just right across the state line from me in Kansas City, Missouri. And I do have an historian who can talk about corrupt cops kind of in the Pendergast era of early 20th century, Kansas City. And so there's lots of interesting stories there. Kansas City, even during Prohibition, was basically just an open town for a lot of vice. And a lot of things went on here that were technically illegal, but they were just openly allowed. And I like that because it scratches the local itch for people here in the Midwest who really like that I add some local flavor to the show. I have a lead on a Bonnie and Clyde expert, but there are several other gangsters and hooligans in that era in the 20s and 30s and a little bit before and after that would be interesting because it wouldn't strictly be speaking a mafia story. But the next item on my list is old mafia stories. People love to tune into that, and you've already heard me partner with Gangland Wire before, and so I have a ready resource there. Another lead that I have that I'm interested in following is I have a connection to somebody who was a surviving victim of a serial killer. And I'm not sure if I can get an interview there. It was offered to me, and I haven't pursued it enough to know if they would actually get on microphone and talk about it. But that would be an interesting historical view. All right, that takes us up through a couple dozen ideas, but I've got also a list of famous people and content creators that I'd like to invite onto the show. Now, some of these I've already contacted. Some of them are like, yeah, I'm really busy right now, but I'd love to help you out. Others, radio silence. And so it's hard to know if I'm even getting a good email address if I try to contact them through their YouTube channel or whatever. So that's been a little bit hit and miss. Sometimes I've been very successful, and those people maybe have already been on the show, but I've got a long list of others that I'm trying to get on. One would be Chris Baker from the Lucky Gunner YouTube channel. He's done some historical stuff, like talking about Jelly Bryce and hip shooting and how a lot of law enforcement was taught in the early 20th century to shoot from the hip. This guy is a fascinating story, and I think Chris Baker would be a good one to bring that story to us. Another person I'd like to invite on the show is Donut Operator. Now, I've contacted him several times, and he was previously law enforcement, and now he's a pretty successful YouTube personality. Again, getting time to actually get an interview with him and talk about his story and any wisdom and experience he's gleaned from transitioning out of law enforcement, I think it'd be a good one. We just haven't made that work yet. Jocko Willink. He's a former Navy SEAL, very big personality, very famous, and also very busy. And so I haven't had him on the show, but I'd love to get him to give just a shout out to my local department here and give maybe some advice on overcoming adversity. I think he'd be a great one. Dan Bongino, who is a well-known talk show host, but he was formerly in the Secret Service, and I'd love to have him come on and talk about that. I know he's, again, a very busy person, has probably a ton of requests, but I'm just trying to keep, sending requests toward him and see if he can take time to talk about maybe a law enforcement officer applying to become part of the Secret Service. I just think he'd be good to talk about that. Then you have personalities like Chris Capiluto, who's a YouTube personality from Tasks and Purpose. He served in the military and did a really good job this last year of doing a video that wasn't his normal content, but he was talking about like seeing his first killed in action. That's just the trauma of experiencing something suddenly where the person next to you is suddenly dead. I think he did a fantastic job with that, and I've sent an invitation out to him. I hope that he has seen that and is able to be on the show. Officer Daniels is a humorist, and he's a former police officer and just a social media personality. Would love to have him on the show. And he's representative of probably another 10 or 15 names that could be on this list of former police officers who've gone on to be comedians, humorists, YouTube personalities, et cetera, et cetera. But I would love to just get them on and talk about that transition to their second chapter. I'd love to talk to them about the shared experience that I have with them as far as putting content out there and trying to, play the algorithm and get their content seen, especially when sometimes the algorithms, I think, are working against things that are pro law enforcement. But there's several people that would be on that list. Then there are a number of writers that I would like to talk to. Now, I've had pretty good luck. When I approach a writer, a lot of times I can find a good email address for them. I reach out, and a lot of them respond and have been extraordinarily helpful. I mean, really, almost every writer that I've had on the show, they're like, how can I help you? They just are really quick to be supportive of what I'm doing. The ones that I'm still looking to get a hold of would be David Simon, who was a Baltimore journalist, and he wrote the book that was behind the TV show The Wire. He spent a lot of time in Baltimore getting to know cops, earning their trust, and then representing them in media. I'd love to pick his brain about that. Another one would be Graham Yost. He's a writer and Hollywood director and producer. He did movies like Speed, which actually has some cop characters in it, but then also Band of Brothers, Justified, which follows a deputy U.S. Marshal, The Americans, which is about Soviet spies playing cat and mouse with the FBI. He has spent a career writing and directing movies about military and law enforcement characters, and representing a lot of heroism and where it comes from and just regular people, whether soldiers or law enforcement. How do those people rise to the occasion and do something heroic? Would love to talk to Graham Yost. Another author I'd like to talk to is Lee Child. He's a British guy. He's got a TV background. I think he might have been in the military, but he's the author of the Jack Reacher series. He wrote a ton of the 25 or 30 Jack Reacher novels, and then has recently, in recent years, handed that over to his younger brother to continue that story. But Jack Reacher is former military police who's now this lone wolf that wanders the landscape and solves crimes. Maybe commits a lot of crimes too, but he's that lone wolf, force of nature that is out there to do justice, kind of vigilante style, and it's very popular. Would love to pick his brain about all of those topics. There are any number of individual police officers who've done amazing things, some of whom I've contacted and we just haven't been able to work it out yet, but others I haven't contacted yet. They're just too far down the list. I haven't gotten to them yet. Some of those would be like Greg Stevens from Garland, Texas. He's a Texas cop who, shot 2 Muslim terrorists who were going to commit an act of terrorism, and he stopped them cold. And so I've actually met him before, but I haven't had the opportunity to talk to him about being on the podcast. Scott Walker, we have a mutual friend through Scotland Yard. He's a Scotland Yard hostage negotiator who now does international hostage negotiating. I've talked to him a few times by email, but we just haven't worked it out yet. Dr. Dominique Wong, who is a tactical physician. So she's a doctor, but she trains SWAT teams in moving casualties and training cops as the first line of emergency medical support in that first 30 minutes. I've met her and talked with her. I'm really impressed. Would love to bring her on to talk. There are people like Dr. Michael Robinson, who's a licensed psychologist, worked with police officers for several years, wrote a book called Police Psychology. Michael Connolly is a former Los Angeles Police Department homicide detective for 25 years or something, and he's the author of several best-selling novels, including the Harry Bosch series, been made into TV shows and that kind of thing. I think that would be good. Dr. Kevin Gilmartin, retired police officer, mental health professional, author of the book Emotional Survival of Law Enforcement. He speaks about stuff all the time. There's probably 20 topics I could talk to Gilmartin about. We have a local psychologist, Dr. Prohaska, here in Kansas City. Love to talk to her about some of her specialties, especially childhood trauma and disruption connected to, how we are as, how healthy we are as adults. I'd like to contact Shelby Perkett, who wrote an article in Fire Rescue One about the incivility impact. It's an article that really impressed me. This was, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And this article was about, just the rudeness of people in the workplace and how that lowers, how that impacts morale. I'd like to talk to Tessa West, professor of psychology, and wrote the book Jerks at Work. And so very similar topic there. Javier and Kathy Bustos, the peer support couple, or that peer support couple, they do a really good job online, making their presence known through social media, and they go around and speak on peer support topics all around the country. And I've been chatting with them and would like to get them in for a conversation as soon as possible. Also, Cindy Doyle of Code 4 Couples. I think that should be an excellent interview. And Kim Colgrove of Pause First Academy. She has a particularly traumatic personal story and would like to interview her. Wendy Hummel recommended her. Okay, that's about halfway, and we're down to my miscellaneous topics, and this is all over the place. I'd like to do an episode on the history of the FOP and police unions. There are other options besides the Fraternal Order of Police, and I don't know if it should be a history episode or if it should be like, hey, here's the current state and the pros and cons of either having a union or not having a union when you are a police officer today. I think there are endless internal affairs stories. It is not fun to police the police But there's lots of other aspects to that job, whether it's citizens making complaints and some of the shake your head, you can't make this stuff up humor that comes from that, or if it's the tension that comes from being one of the rats, one of the cops that have turned against their own, which is hugely unfair, but it's a common trope inside police culture that, internal affairs is the worst job and everybody hates you and doesn't trust you and is afraid of you and that kind of thing. That's not always actually true, but it is interesting to talk about. I would like to talk to a wedding planner. I do a lot of cop weddings. In fact, I've done more this year than I've ever done before. And to talk to somebody who's a professional wedding planner, maybe a wedding planner podcaster, and ask them about their experience with cop weddings, so we can kind of compare and contrast and talk about how a police wedding is different than other weddings, I think that would be really interesting. I had a listener recommend that I talk to school resource officers or even a school resource chaplain, and I really haven't had the chance to do that yet. And so I'd love to pursue that first chance I get. I am curious who the most active or most experienced bomb squad is in the U.S. Is it a local agency like LAPD or is it the feds? I'm really not sure. And so I know some bomb squad people, but I've never asked, who's the most experienced, who's the go-to? Is there a all-star legendary personality among bomb squads? I have never looked into it. One that I have looked into extensively, in fact, I'm on my 5th lead trying to develop a time to really get somebody in to do an interview, is a police rescue diver. I have heard the most amazing stories about lakes and rivers and other bodies of water where police divers are going in to recover a car or to search for a body, or just incredible stories, very dramatic. But I can't get one of those police divers to sit down in front of me to save my life. And so I think now I'm on number 5. I think number 5 is going to come through for me, but we will see. What are your favorite cop TV shows? Now, I do know a lot of cops who just do not watch police procedural television shows. They don't watch it at all. But a lot of them do, and a lot of them have their favorites. I know a British cop who won't watch British cop TV shows, but he watches American cop TV shows. So what's everybody's favorite? I'm interested in hearing that. Also, local slang for bad guys. What do you call the bad guys? I am ready. I have all kinds of ways to bleep out all the bad words, but there are some places, some states, some municipalities that have very unique lingo for what they call the bad guys. Another episode idea that I've had in reserve for quite a while now is the commander's headache. It's all of the officer issues that supervisors have to deal with, like officers not cleaning their cars, not washing their plate carrier, not having good eating habits, or worse, eating in the break room or eating in the car without cleaning up after themselves, what's in their locker that shouldn't be, just all kinds of stuff like that. There's an endless list in that category. I'm interested in a part of policing that is beginning to really disappear, which is mounted police. There are still several agencies that have horses, but a lot of them have downsized, and some big ones like Boston and San Diego have completely disbanded as far as I know. I think that the oldest mounted police unit that's never taken a break is New South Wales, Australia. I'm pretty sure. So would love to get somebody there who can either talk about the current job or the history of it. Another job that's disappearing because of technology is the police helicopter pilot. I have a couple leads. I have a KCK-PD helicopter pilot from the 70s, Vietnam era helicopter pilot that then flew for the police department. But I also have somebody who's currently a helicopter pilot and another lead where they are going to be trained by their department to be a helicopter pilot. So there's a few leads, and I love aviation. Another endless category where there's thousands of great stories is worst body cam stories. Body cams have gone from really rare to almost ubiquitous in just the last decade, and the funniest things have been caught on body cams, some of which are appropriate for the show, some of which are not, but hey, I would love to collect those stories, nevertheless. I'd like to know what someone who was marrying a cop needs to be told during premarital counseling. So maybe someone who does premarital counseling like what I do, I would love to compare notes about what do we tell a person who's about to marry a cop. Is it different if the civilian is either male or female? And do you offer particular books or resources, or do you send them on ride-alongs? I mean, what needs to be included in that premarital counseling? What are the most common jobs that retired cops find themselves doing? A lot of cops who get out mid-career find themselves in sales jobs. I know that car salesmen are stereotypically former cops, that there's a lot of that, but there's other ones too. And I'd love to kind of create a list of here are the top 10 jobs that cops do when they're no longer doing law enforcement. When it comes to radio traffic, and especially TIN codes, I've got questions. Why are TIN codes not standardized across the country? Why do they differ from agency to agency? And then also connected to that, why are there so many different forms of the phonetic alphabet? When I was a kid, I memorized the NATO phonetic alphabet from like Vietnam era, post-Vietnam era, 1970s, 1980s. But police departments use a completely different one, and it has been so difficult to try to remember that phonetic alphabet instead of the one that I learned 30 years ago. I have always wanted to talk to the person at the DMV who checks the vanity plate submissions. Why do some of those get approved? Why do some of those not get approved? Just driving around town, I've got questions there too. I want to hear life hacks for patrol. What are the best life hacks that really change everything you do about being in the police car, getting in and out of the police car, wearing your equipment? Is there something new, some new product that has just been a lifesaver? I'd like to know. I would like to do an episode on Sir Robert Peel and the Peelian principles. Going back and reading those, I'm shocked at how much that sounds like modern community policing. There's just incredible wisdom to glean there, especially considering how long ago that was written. That needs to happen. I'd like to go through the Miranda rights and not only the history of it, because you certainly could do a history episode on the Miranda rights, but also some of the misunderstandings and the myths. And I've heard several funny stories about trying to read somebody their rights. I also have interest in what rights are read to people in other countries and how those are different. And when I'm watching British TV shows, I hear their version of what we would call the Miranda rights. I have a lead on 2 architects who designed police stations. And when I talk to them, I ask them what were the worst police stations you've ever been in. And wow, did they have some good stories. I'm hoping to get those guys on in the next year. There is a ton to talk about with artificial intelligence and the artificial intelligence revolution and how that affects everything from report writing to crime statistics and just so many other things. There's just countless ways that this new technology is going to help us collate crime data, see patterns, and solve crimes. And generally talking about the future is kind of fun. Related to that, I'd like to talk to LEO drone operators. If you're running a drone for your department, if you've got an actual job, like that's not just a part-time thing or an extra thing, but it's like this is a newly assigned job or unit, I think that would be great to talk about. I'm going to have to find before May of next year's Law Enforcement Mom of the Year. I've had a mom of cops. I've had a cop who was a stepmom. Maybe a mom with several kids and talk about having to take maternity leave or maybe some other angle that I haven't thought of yet. But I do not have anybody selected for who will be the podcast Law Enforcement Mom of the Year next Mother's Day. If you have nominations, please let me know. I have a lead on a defense attorney and what their view is of police officers in the courtroom. I'd like to talk to a police officer about how their marriage or their career was ruined by gambling. We've become very accepting of online gambling in recent years, and yet gambling for generations has destroyed people. I'd like to talk to somebody in the funeral business about planning a cop funeral. I've planned my own chaplain funeral. I kind of know what I would like to have and what I would like not to have. I've attended several cop and chaplain funerals. I'd like to compare notes. Maybe there's some great idea I've not thought of that I should definitely include in my instructions to my family. Some of the podcast ideas I've already talked about could be compilation episodes or be used as questions in a compilation episode. Some of the compilation episodes I'd like to do in the future, though, would be about human trafficking stories. I know some people who work for some nonprofits that deal with human trafficking. I certainly have met a lot of cops who deal with human trafficking, interdicting human trafficking. But there's just incredible stories and also some practical advice, like what are the top 5 things cops need to know this year about human trafficking? Another compilation idea would be next year's ghost stories. I've gotten a lot of great feedback about the ghost story Halloween episodes that I've had the last couple of years, and I'm going to need some more ghost stories. So that's something I'm looking for. Also, I'd like to know who the best trainer you've had across any subject. It could be exercise, self-defense tactics, legal issues, any topic at all. But who was the best trainer? Was there somebody who was just especially gifted at communicating and holding your interest and not just killing you with PowerPoint? Let's talk about police uniforms. What are the best colors? What are the worst materials? Should a police uniform be more military-like or less military-like? What do you think of wearing green or khaki? What do you think of wearing shorts? What's more uncomfortable, the bagpiper's kilt or the bicycle unit's spandex? And I'm not sure if I mean that from the point of view of the wearer or the observer. Another compilation one would be lessons learned from military service that directly apply to your law enforcement career. I know a ton of cops who some of their best information they've gotten about leadership came from being enlisted in the Army, not specifically taught in their law enforcement agency. What about stories of those cops who have been seriously injured or wounded and then returned to duty? There are some amazing stories, including amputees who have returned to full-on duty, working in the street, doing great things in law enforcement, even though they've had very serious injuries. Also, I'd like to talk about body armor. There have been cops who have been shot in the plate. I know some. And I would love to hear what their experience was, what it actually felt like in the moment, how long did it take for them to realize what had happened, and how that affected them afterward. I'm actively developing firsthand account stories for detectives. I have some, but I need to do more. I'm also trying to refine the list of questions that I'm asking detectives, and I'm also going to return to firsthand account hands-on stories for patrol officers. I have a ton of great information there, but I'm going to have to refresh my reservoir of interviews. I have a couple chaplains who've agreed to talk to me about go bags for chaplains. Do you have a bag that sits in the front seat of your car when you're on duty as a police chaplain? And if so, what do you have in it? Chaplains can provide so much help and provide so many extra resources, but you can't carry everything with you. So what's in that go bag? Similarly, some chaplains wear a vest. If you have a vest, it's got all that molly and Velcro. What do you put on that vest? Do you wear it slick, or do you start adding equipment to it? I've got a guy who works for Chaplain, which is a suicide prevention hotline. Can't wait to get his interview done. Also, Code 9, another cop suicide prevention group. There's opportunities there. And there's a long list of other nonprofits and support organizations that have been in the mental health and officer wellness sphere for a long time, and others that are just now getting into it. There's just an abundance of good interviews to be had in that area. And of course, my show covers that quite a bit. I'd like to talk to people who are on metro crime commissions and do some of the coordinating between different agencies in a large metro area. I have several plans to talk to some retired officers about pranks that were pulled. If you work with coworkers that you really like, or maybe coworkers that you really don't like, There have been some legendary pranks pulled in police cars and police equipment and police stations and all kinds of stuff. I won't spoil any of it here, but man, there's some really good, really funny stories. I know several cops that want to become lawyers, but I've also met some lawyers who became cops. I've got one of them here locally and a few others. I'd like to interview them and why go from the courtroom to the police car. I have an interview in the works with an officer who had been shot by a sniper. I have a number of local police chiefs from all over the country who have unique experiences and insights into the job or into officer wellness. There's just a long list of really good interviews with people that I want to get to. I'd like to talk to cops who have gone on and become chaplains. I've already talked to a few, but I got a pretty good list of some more, so I'm just going to group them in as one of the ideas that still has a lot of meat on the bone there. I know a cop who trains missionaries and does overseas security for various missions organizations and nonprofits and helps them prevent kidnapping and hostage situations. Finally, I would like to talk to police academy instructors. What motivates you to teach the next generation of law enforcement officers? I think that you and I have a lot in common. Okay, that's a list of 99 ideas that I have not yet made into a podcast episode. This list was highly condensed down from my actual list of probably 250 different ideas, which would represent at least 5 more years of the show. And that list is constantly growing. And it's constantly changing, especially as you make suggestions and as you contact me and put me in touch with interesting people. What I'm looking for is people who have wisdom. It's not enough to just have a great story. You also need growth and insight about what you've been through so that others can benefit from your hard-earned experiences. Understand that I can't make any promises about how quickly I'll get to one of your suggestions. If you email me today and say, hey, I've got someone, it's a perfect interview, it's exactly what you're looking for, I might pursue that immediately and turn it around in very short order. Or I might sit on it for several months because I'm already working on so many other ideas. A lot of that is more art than science, and I apologize in advance. I have episodes, recent episodes, that I wanted to pursue when I very first started this podcast, and it didn't happen until 2 or 3 years later. And I don't know why. That's the way it worked out. I hope that several of these ideas really connected with you and sound like a show that you want to hear. And if you can help make one of these topics happen as an episode, then I can't wait to hear from you. On the 100th episode of Hey Chaplain, one of my patrol sergeants takes over the podcast, turns the tables, and asks some personal questions.
Knowing what you know about policemen, and you've probably been around in your chaplaincy enough to have seen a class from the very beginning when they're brand new, recruits and trainees, and then they get out into the field. You've probably seen enough evolutions of those. So seeing how the sausage is made, as it were, would you encourage your children or your grandchildren, because I know you just had a granddaughter, grandbaby not that long ago, to be police officers?
The ideas expressed here are pretty good ideas, but they're not entirely original. So if you're making your own podcast and think, I'm going to steal some of these ideas, go ahead. People give me their ideas all the time, and I've got plenty more where these came from. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain. And as always, pray for peace in our city.